Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Jack Wolfson, board certified cardiologist and founder of the Natural Heart Doctor. Welcome to another edition of the Healthy Heart Show. My purpose and passion is to get heart health out to the entire world, get people off of pharmaceuticals safely, effectively, preventing heart attacks, strokes, congestive heart failure, high blood pressure, cholesterol issues. That's exactly what I do as a board certified cardiologist for almost 20 years. But I want to talk to you tonight about nutrition and what is the best foods for heart health and total body health. And I've got a fantastic guest with us tonight. I'm going to bring her on in a second. But I want to also ask you, why is there so much debate amongst people in society? Why is there the debate? We talk about vegan, we talk about vegetarian, we talk about Mediterranean, carnivore, paleo, keto. There's all these different things that what we debate on, and it really shouldn't be that way. And again, my guest tonight, you're absolutely going to love her. She is just a wealth of knowledge. She's recovered from her own health issues by using paleo nutrition. I wrote the Amazon best-selling book, The Paleo Cardiologist: The Natural Way to Heart Health, to be able to get the best in heart health to people. We are streaming live on Facebook, and we are also on YouTube live. Again, feel free to make comments and also share this information with your friends, your community. Knowledge is power. They're not getting this information from their conventional medical doctor. You need to share this message so everybody hears from two experts, two authorities who've been in the field, in this for a long time, a lot of research. I wrote a chapter for an integrative cardiology textbook along with my chief nutritionist, master's in nutrition, Ashley Swanson. And Ashley and I have 187 references in our chapter about paleo nutrition and heart health. So feel free to make comments, share, like what we're saying. If you disagree with what we're saying, do so respectively. What we need now more than ever is open communications to be able to share our thoughts. And here we are to go along with that. So again, I'm a board certified cardiologist, 10 years of medical training, 10 years in the biggest group in the state of Arizona, 8.5 years now, naturalheartdoctor.com. And also my book is available to you at freeheartbook.com, freeheartbook.com. All you do is pay shipping and handling. All right, I want to introduce our guest because she is absolutely brilliant, and I would consider her a longtime friend. And I met her and her husband a few years ago at Paleo Effects, and I just fell in love with what Autumn Smith and Chaz Smith have really brought to the world and how the expansion of their company called Paleo Valley. And I'll tell you about that as well. So Autumn Smith is the co-founder of Paleo Valley and Wild Pastures. Wild Pastures is their online source where you can get meat delivered right to your doorstep, packaged professionally, dry ice, eco-friendly packaging, amazing stuff. She has a master's in holistic nutrition, certified eating psychology coach. The psychology of eating is absolutely tremendous. And again, she recovered herself from her health issues. She'll tell us about that story. And again, her and her husband, just a pillar of knowledge and really quality in the space. They talk the talk, walk the walk. So now I'm going to bring on Autumn Smith. Autumn, welcome.
Hi, Dr. Wolfson. Thank you for having me. It's an absolute honor, and we're just as big fans of yours. So thanks for letting me be here.
Yeah, that was like this tremendous intro that I got into, and everyone was like, "Oh, I just want to hear, from Autumn Smith and get her going," because everyone got the publicity on you and I talking tonight. And again, we'll give everyone links about again how to purchase at Paleo Valley, what's going on at Paleo Valley, and because I know it's a lot more than just the meat sticks that I fell in love with, which I think again are just the penultimate snack. We just came back on from a 12-hour road trip, and our kids are eating the meat sticks from Paleo Valley, and they're delicious. But let's dive into this, Autumn. Why do you think there's so much debate going on right now about nutrition? What's really the issue here?
Ooh, I think there's a few issues actually. I mean, first is that research is really hard to do in the nutritional realm. I mean, there is research coming out, but primarily we rely on epidemiological studies, right, where we look at associations rather than actually manipulating variables. And even when we do isolate and manipulate variables, changing one thing about a diet changes many things about that diet. For example, if you're going to cut the carbs, you're going to be eating something else in a higher amount, which means it's kind of hard to ascertain what the results are due to. So there's that. There's the element of our dietary recommendations are highly political. Their creation, there's a lot of lobbyists out there in the food industry who have a lot to gain from us believing that we need to eat the 6 to 11 servings of grain every single day, and that pizza is a vegetable, and all of these other kind of crazy things that come out of that political system. And then there's the fact that we all bring different genetics to the table, right? I'm Norwegian, so I have more Scandinavian. Some people, I have ApoE4, which means I have 2 genes for Alzheimer's. There's research to suggest that I might not benefit from more saturated fat. So we have genetics, then we have our biochemistry we're all bringing to the table, and then we have our thoughts and feelings and what culture is telling us about those foods. And right now it's kind of like the Wild West. Like you said, people are going carnivore to vegan. Everyone's so polarized in this issue. And then I think the last thing is that people often gravitate towards one type of diet and it works for them. And even experts can be guilty of this. And then we believe that that will work for everyone else. But when you start to work with people, you realize, I think as you probably did, a whole foods template is really powerful. But beyond that, there's a lot of different tweaks and of individualization that is required. So it's a sad thing that it's so hard to be healthy today, but there's a lot of companies, I think, invested in keeping us kind of confused too.
Yeah, I think, when you think about that issue and the government's, it started off as the food pyramid and then it developed into the food plate. But how is it possible, Autumn, that the slice of the pyramid that was the grain category was bigger than the vegetable category? For sure, it was bigger than the meat category and the seafood category, which is a major, major mistake and led to millions of people dying unnecessarily based on those recommendations. But on what planet of delusion, and who is writing these guidelines on how the grain category is bigger than the vegetable category?
Yeah, I think you have to realize, like, these entities that create the recommendation, they kind of have a revolving door, and so they have a lot of people who've worked for corporations or industry, and then they kind of get switched around. They become a higher up or someone with influence in these government recommendations. And then we look at the way that our government is subsidizing what we're growing, right? Wheat, rice, corn, that is where the majority of our subsidies go. There's actually this really cool exercise Marion Nestle did at New York University, and she created a plate. If you based what you ate on what the government was paying for, it would be like 3/4 of it would be corn, there'd be a cigarette, there'd be a cotton napkin, there'd be like an ounce of milk and 2 peas. It's crazy. So I think it's because that is what people are incentivized to grow right now. And if we don't get rid of it, there would be a surplus. And there's a lot of people who profit from us believing that we need to eat that. And it's funny because fruits and vegetables, if you want certain subsidies and you want to also grow fruits and vegetables, like your crop insurance could be at risk. And our system is not aligned with health at all. It's just aligned with more profit, unfortunately. And so hopefully through, shows like this, we can kind of incentivize our government to align it with health once again, so we can trust our recommendations. But I think a lot of us have power and that we can do that ourselves through private companies and just learning from shows like yours too.
Imagine that the government may not have our best interest in our health. Does that sound surprising in the year 2021 that is that's not the case? And if we go back to like the doctors and where are all the doctors speaking out about real health and wellness and nutrition? You're not going to hear it because, again, us doctors are not trained in nutrition. My health coaches have more nutritional training in their finger than 99% of cardiologists do. And I went through it and I saw we never talked about nutrition. We never talked about anything health and wellness. We talked about pharmaceuticals, surgical procedures. And my first real exposure to nutrition and heart health came when I was at a meeting of the American College of Cardiology in Orlando, Florida in the year 2000. And I was at that meeting and I saw two absolute titans go at it. It was the late Robert Atkins versus Dean Ornish. And of course, Atkins was a high-fat, low-carb guy, and Ornish was a low-fat, high-carb guy. And they went at it for 45 minutes. These guys hated each other. It was very clear. But I walked out of there and said, wow, the high-fat, low-carb idea and how we've been following that since the dawn of time of human existence just makes perfect sense. The doctors do not have the common sense. And it led me to books like The Paleo Diet by Lauren Cordain and Neanderthal by Ray Audette, and then subsequent reads, and then also diving into the paleontology literature, the anthropology literature, people like Bill Schindler, who you're familiar with, again, like PhDs who actually have had boots on the ground, digging up sites and looking at human existence that goes back again since the dawn of humans, when we were hunter-gatherers, meat and seafood eaters. So there you go. But let me say this. Let me ask you another question, because I know you've got such a passion and interest and education in the psychology of eating, but also how food influences the brain. And I often tell people about the book Grain Brain by the neurologist David Perlmutter. And I say, you can read the book. It's a great read. It's got great ideas and recipes and stuff like that. But the money's in the title, Grain Brain. Grain damages your brain. Can you further elucidate on that?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite areas, actually, because when I transitioned to the paleo diet, I had digestive issues, skin stuff, and mental health issues. And in no way did I ever hypothesize that my mental health would improve. It just wasn't even on my radar at the time, but that was an amazing consequence. All of a sudden, my anxiety and my depression kind of lifted. And what we know in the research is gluten is probably more toxic to the brain than any other area of the body. There's some really crazy testimonials and stories of one particular woman. She was eating gluten and all of a sudden became kind of, she went a little crazy and she started eating bird feces, and her kids had to take her into the hospital, and they took her off of gluten as a last resort. Her symptoms went away, and when she re-added it in, she would again go on the street and beg for cigarettes and money. So it has a profound impact for some people in the sense that their immune system reacts. But also, because we're all consuming so many grains, you've probably heard the term type 3 diabetes. That's what they're calling Alzheimer's these days, because it seems to have that underpinning of insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is when you eat too many carbohydrates for too long, that your body can no longer handle them properly, and your brain essentially can't utilize them. And so essentially starving unless you have that metabolic flexibility, and we can get you back into that protein or ketogenic type diet, high fat diet, which is what your brain really, really needs in the beginning. And so too many grains, too many carbohydrates in general, and too many inflammatory foods like gluten for a lot of people, very, very damaging for the brain.
Yeah, we do so much testing in our office and online virtually, where people order tests. One of our favorite tests is called the Wheat Zoomer, which looks for leaky gut, 7 different components of leaky gut, 30 different antibodies to gluten, and also the non-gluten components of wheat. And we see so many people, because of this, develop this neuroinflammation, and leading to brain fog, leading to Parkinson's and other movement disorders symptoms, leading to Alzheimer's and dementia, and obviously cardiovascular risk, leaky gut, leaky heart, leaky gut, leaky brain. And what we find is that as we often shift people into that higher fat, animal-based diets, that inflammation just goes way, way, way down. And it's really remarkable on what that can do. So, I think, let me ask you this though, because I know obviously that everything that you've done since day one has been about eating ethically raised animals, and making sure that those animals are grass-fed, grass-finished, which is very key because a lot of companies say they're grass-fed. Well, I think every animal, not every animal, but most animals may start off with some amount of grass, but then they're finished on grain. And then all of that grain and all the problems, the mold mycotoxins, et cetera, in the grain, it all gets into the animal, leads to an unhealthy animal, and then we eat that and we suffer the consequences as well. So maybe shed some light again on the importance of the grass-fed, grass-finished.
Yeah, that's such an important distinction. And it wasn't until I really got into the space and met with the farmers that we realized there was so much nuance and how unregulated that really is, and how much greenwashing there is with people trying to, knowing that consumers are growing more aware of wanting cleaner products and finding label kind of claims that they can make. But when it comes to grass feeding, like Dr. Wolfson said, all animals start out on grass, right, for the first part of their lives. And so when you see something that says grass-fed, something you have to be sure of is, were they ever fed grain, or were they fed grass for their entire life? Because as he said, a lot of times they're grass-fed and then they're given grains that like could be contaminated, like he said, with mycotoxins that could have other chemicals on them. And then when you put that into an animal, not only does it make an animal unhealthy, but then it changes the composition of their final product, right? And so you have to find someone who's doing 100% grass-fed and grass-finished. And even better than that is people who are using regenerative practices and incorporating animals into these systems that are literally designed to improve the health of the soil, because that is our big problem right now. We're at a time in history where our soil and our food has lower levels of nutrients than ever before. I just read a stat that you have to eat 2 times the amount of meat, 3 times the amount of fruit, and 4 times the amount of vegetables that you did in 1940 to get the same amount of nutrition. And so for me, I think our company, I want it to be part of the solution. And so we find these regenerative farms. And last thing, you just need to know that no one is really regulating grass-fed. And so you can say grass-fed even if it is fed grains at the end of its life. So you really have to inquire, get to know the people, get to know the farmer even better, who are behind the products.
Yeah, and again, right, the marketplace is so confusing, and when you try and go out to eat, it's essentially impossible. You have to call ahead, you have to ask the questions, what kind of meat, what kind of oils, what kind of cooking materials. There's probably a handful of places again that the Wolfsons can go to, and it's unfortunate that you can't go to these places because of the meat that they're getting. And I've been to some of I'm a Chicago guy initially. I've been to some of the best steakhouses in the world, and I no longer ever eat that food if I cannot confirm that it was not ethically raised, that it was a grass-fed, grass-finished animal. I do not eat those products. It's just not something I ever do. So that's why it's very important, again, to carry supplies in stock from Paleo Valley to be able to have those kind of foods in a pinch. And I have a lot of patients who drive for a living, they're truckers, and I'm always like, pick up the meat sticks and products from Paleo Valley, and also again, wild pastures. Now, one thing also at Paleo Valley that is, I think, a couple years that you've had, it's a beautiful product, beautiful branding, and it looks delicious and it tastes delicious. And that, of course, is something that is kind of a deal breaker for a lot of people when it comes to consuming, but it is the most prehistoric food, and you guys put it inside of a tablet, and that is the grass-fed organ complex. So break down the importance of eating organs for me.
Yeah, so there's multiple reasons, and I came across this product because when I got pregnant, I realized I need to have the most nutrient-dense foods possible, because I wanted to create a super baby, the healthiest babies possible. So I kept coming back to the same thing. Organ meats are gram for gram, literally the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet, especially liver, right? The world's most natural source and powerful source of B12 and vitamin A. And we also have all the other vitamins, or B vitamins, CoQ10 in heart, and selenium in the kidney, which is really important for the thyroid and just an important antioxidant. And they've actually done trials where they put rats in water and give them B vitamins or just a regular diet and organs. And at the end of the trial, even though when you're just given B vitamins, they'll swim for like 13 to 14 minutes, but given organs, it's like 65 minutes and 70 minutes. And they even had to just end the trial. This was a 1951 trial because the rats were still swimming. It's so invigorating. Athletes have been using it for centuries. And that's kind of why I started to realize I needed more of this in my life, especially because a lot of our clients are nutrient deficient, and fatigue is one of the #1 things. And we're just not eating nose to tail the way that we used to, right? The B vitamins in organs are balancing out the methionine in muscle meats, and our ancestors absolutely prioritized organ meats. They were what they gave to their old people and their pregnant and their young, and animals in the wild do the same thing. And so organ meats are just kind of this forgotten superfood. There was even research out of Colombia in 2018 that organ meats are one of the most mental health protective foods. And I don't know many people who are consuming them, which is why I wanted to put them in capsules and just take that ick factor out of it, so that even if you don't like to taste them, which I don't either, I don't blame you, but you can still reap all their benefits. And of course, you never want to get an organ meat from a conventionally raised animal because, you know, the liver will kind of build up toxins if it is an unhealthy animal. And so making sure that it's from a 100% grass-fed and grass-finished source is absolutely paramount as well. But yeah, it's one of my favorite products.
Yeah, it's, you know, I remember years ago, my wife and I were watching this TV program, and it was a killer whale that was fighting with a great white shark. And the killer whale, like, rammed into the shark, essentially rendering it unconscious. And then it took another lap around and came up and went right to where the liver was, took a massive chunk out of that flesh of the shark, and then swam away. So it like instinctively knew where that organ was, what it was looking for, and then the rest of it goes down to the bottom of the ocean for the scavengers. And like you said, out in the wild, animals in the wild, that's exactly what they're doing. They prize the liver and the other organs, and a lot of the muscle meats that is all people eat when they're eating burgers and ribeye and filet and New York strip and all these different cuts. Again, that's typically what people are eating, and they're missing out on that vital nutrient. So I think that organ complex is a fantastic way to supplement. We still want you to eat those, eat the liver, eat the kidney. Cardiologist, you pointed to CoQ10 being so high in the heart, all of those aminos, all those essential fats, all those B vitamins loaded in there. And you mentioned also vitamin A. Vitamin A in the preformed vitamin A form only comes from animal products. It doesn't come from carrots. Carrots is beta carotene, and you got to, convert, one step to the other, and eventually make vitamin A. And you mentioned genetics kind of early on. That's where these genetic SNPs can kind of come in and wreak havoc on the system. And when we test people's vitamin A levels, not only in the serum or blood, but intracellular, we find so much deficiency in these folks. And it's a great, a very important thing for so many different things, whether obviously it's well known for eye health, but it's a tremendous antioxidant, anti-inflammatory as well. So tell me about kind of what led you and Chaz to start Paleo Valley.
Well, basically it was because I was a sickly child. When I was about 10 or 11, I started having digestive issues, and in my small town Montana home, they didn't know what to do with me. They told me I had irritable bowel syndrome, which is kind of a wastebasket diagnosis. And so they gave me Gas X, and I just kind of went on and thought, okay, well, I guess this is just how I'm gonna live. And we now know there's like this profound gut-brain connection. And so as I progressed through high school, I started having mental health struggles and skin struggles and anxiety and depression. And then I started abusing substances, and my life just got crazy. So crazy that I got kicked out of my parents' house before I even graduated high school. But luckily, I'm an avid learner, and I still went to college, and always just kind of like pulled myself up and pulled things together, and actually became a fitness trainer for Tracy Anderson Method. So I always looked really fit, but I was definitely not well. And it wasn't until I met my husband that he saw like behind the curtain, like, wow, you have this smile on, but you're suffering. You're really suffering. And so I do not want this for my new life. And so he got on Dr. Google, and he saw that back in 2010, some people, like very few people, were using Paleo Diet to kind of cure digestive issues. And it was a really novel concept, but I had nothing to lose. So we tried it. In 30 days, my digestive symptoms were gone. And then as I just dove in, I quit my job, I educated myself and learned more and more about this. My mental health improved dramatically, my skin health. It was just like such a profound transformation that I knew I had to create a way to make these foods, like the organ meats and the really high quality regenerative beef that most people can't access, like a really realistic, accessible option for anyone who wants to reclaim their health.
Love it. And for anyone who wants to order, again, you get 15% off if you use the code Wolfson. Autumn Smith, her husband Chaz, the company over at Paleo Valley, they've made that offer to everyone who's listening tonight. So definitely you want to load up on, we talked about the organ complex. We talked about the meat sticks. We talked about the grass-fed beef sticks. And then, of course, you got the pasture-raised turkey sticks. And you have some other interesting products over there, too. You know, you kind of, again, you branched out. I know you got an amazing vitamin C product. You got your apple cider vinegar complex. You've got an organic greens. Kind of tell us about that, and then maybe give us a little insight as to what's next over at Paleo Valley.
Oh, we've got some big plans. We just are expanding our team, and we have so much in the works. We kind of want to move into the children's line and do like some sugar-free, artificial sweetener-free, like all the weird chemical-free candy and breakfast foods for kids. So that's the direction we're moving. We're also really expanding our meat product line into jerky and salmon jerky even, because we really think that regenerative agriculture is the solution to at least 3 very large problems. And if we can create a demand for those farmers, that I think we can really move the needle, because Dr. David Johnson said if we can just transition 10 to 20% of our agricultural lands, we can actually begin drawdown. So to us, that is very exciting. And so we're doing that. But yeah, also, like he said, my second or third favorite product is our Essential C. It's literally the most potent natural source of vitamin C on the market. Most vitamin C is made from genetically modified corn, which is kind of crazy, and then it's processed very harshly. And then you end up with just ascorbic acid rather than the full spectrum vitamin C. So we took 3 exotic and organic superfoods. And then we also have a neuro effect. If you're interested in brain health, medicinal mushrooms are amazing, not only for your brain, but for your heart health, for your metabolic health, for your immune system. And so we put 8 mushrooms into like kind of this little complex. Now, the truth about most mushrooms is that they're often grown in this kind of like shortcut process where they're grown on grains. And then you actually you cannot separate the grain from the mushroom. And so up to 50% of certain products, even the really popular ones, is just grain. And they don't have to tell you that. And so when I found that out, I knew, okay, we have to do it better and standardize for what's called the beta-glucan content, which is a polysaccharide thought to be responsible for most of their immunomodulatory and other effects. So that's our neuro effect complex. And we have our superfood bars for anyone who needs a snack. We have chocolate, apple cinnamon. We're coming out with a lemon meringue and a red velvet cake. And for most people, those are some of the favorites. And the other one, greens powder. The thing that's unique about that is that we don't have cereal grasses. Now, most people think cereal grasses are a superfood, but they actually contain lectins, and one in particular that can be very problematic for people, especially those with digestive issues and insulin issues, the wheat germ agglutinin. So we left that out. And then the last is just our bone broth protein powder. Now, there's collagen. It's a big deal. It's one of those nose to tail things I think everyone needs more of, but most is derived from animal hides, and it's not grass-fed and grass-finished. Again, it's just grass-fed. But what we did was we take the bones, and then we use water, and then it makes this beautiful powder that melts and like stirs effortlessly, and you have all the wonderful benefits of collagen.
I think you brought up some fantastic points, of course, but one thing is everybody is on this bone broth craze, and I appreciate that. But if it's not coming from a grass-fed, grass-finished animal, you are doing yourself a tremendous disservice, and you need to switch it up. And most people, again, if you look at the labels, even of those popular brands and some of our, some of the thought, what we assume are the thought leaders in this space, they're not getting grass finished products, and you're just boiling that into a powder, and it's just not the right way to do it. So Autumn, you bring up some fantastic points. I'm excited for the kids' treats. I'm excited to try those out. Not on me personally, of course, but on my kids. But, no, I mean, I'll definitely try them. But again, I want to circle back to the meat sticks, and I'm super excited about the salmon jerky, because as much as I love meat sticks and as much as I love eating free-range grass-fed meats, there's nothing more healthy than wild seafood. So the fact you guys are venturing over into that, huge applause. And I know you guys are going to get the best of the best products. But for the kids, again, for kids snacks in their lunch, something again, mid-afternoon for car trips, plane trips. When we go bike riding, my two boys and I, we go on mountain bike, rides, and we're not eating junk. We're eating high quality foods that nourish the body, support the body, lead to athletic performance, brain performance, and overall health and wellness. So absolutely good stuff. Autumn, tell me again about, maybe, as far as getting back to the meat stick thing, how people why they need to, and how they avoid soy in these sticks, gluten, artificials, in some of these kind of said to be premium products.
Yeah, it's funny because that's how that was why we created our flagship product, because when I was on tour, I had my husband bring me a suitcase full of grass-fed beef sticks that I thought were healthy. They still led to digestive distress. And I was like, what is going on? So yeah, you have to be really careful. There's soy, there's gluten in a lot of meat sticks because it makes people want to eat more, right? And there's also something called encapsulated citric acid, which is this hidden ingredient that's in pretty much every beef stick. And it involves mold and citric acid made from GMO corn, and then hydrogenated oil. And you can actually take these little balls and then they just meet into the stick, or they just like melt into the stick, and this drops the pH. That is pretty much how every beef stick on the market is preserved, except for ours, because ours are fermented. And so you really just have to be mindful. And I know it sounds nerdy, but you can, if you don't know the company, call the company. Have these animals ever been fed grain? Look at those ingredients. You will be shocked. There's like BHT and BHA, and these are chemicals that have been linked to cancer, and they can still end up in our food. Soy obviously can be really, really harmful for reproductive health. MSG is something a lot of people want to avoid, and I don't blame them. And sugar. I don't know why you need sugar in a meat stick, but just it's shocking really to see how few meat sticks are actually made with health rather than profit in mind, and just flavor. Ours taste good, but they're also really, really good for you. They contain probiotics, and they have like a little snap to them. So yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't understand why more companies aren't really looking at the health aspect of what they're doing as much as we are, but we're definitely committed to that. That's one of our main driving forces, because we're eating all of this, and so is our 6-year-old boy Maverick. So we'll never be cutting corners.
No, I mean, again, for us too, not only for our patients, not only for our friends, but yeah, I mean, I've got my 14-year-old, my 9-year-old, my 3-year-old. I mean, she just loves the Paleo Valley meat sticks. So thank you again for providing that to everybody, and everything that you're doing over at Paleo Valley. Again, if you head over to Paleo Valley, you can use the code Wolfson. You get 15% off your order, and I would stock up on stuff. You never know when there's going to be a run on some of these natural and healthy products. Again, whether it's government shutdowns or supply side issues. So these products that, again, you guys have at Paleo Valley, I mean, they got a shelf life, for a long time. I know you guys are getting them as fresh as possible. But again, these things stick around, right? 12, 18 months. What kind of shelf life are we expecting on the stuff?
Yep, about a year. And you can extend that a little bit with refrigeration, but it's not necessary. So yeah, you can definitely keep them. And that's exactly what I did when the pandemic hit. I stocked up. And so, yeah, it's unfortunate because there's a big push against meat too, which is really sad. But yeah, it's always available here.
Yeah, as far as again, the agenda and the corporatism that happens, and what's happening, with the farmers, the farmland, the subsidies that the farmers get, and that's one issue. And of course, Kellogg's and Quaker Oats and Nabisco, they're the ones who write all the policies for the government. They donate all the monies to to officials, whether you're on the left side, right side, whatever side you're on. It's all corrupt. It's all sponsored by industry. And then you take in the aspect of kind of this cancel culture and what is determined to be political correctness. And we are humans, and we eat a human diet. And if we want the best in our health, these are the foods that we need to eat. And I assure you that free-range grass-fed cows they're not destroying the planet. That's for sure. They're they're not belching. They're not passing gas or flatulence or anything that's destroying the planet. It is all just part of nature's ecosystem. One of the first books I read contained a lot of information about Joel Salatin from Polyspace Farms. And again, just about common sense methodology on raising pasture-raised animals as part of this larger ecosystem. And that's the only solution to existence on this planet. It is not to ban the sale of animal products. It's to promote the raising and the processing and the consumption of ethically raised animals. So, Autumn, any last comments you wanna share with the people?
Yeah, just two, in that there was recent research that came out that I know there's these meat alternatives. There's a big push for them right now, but this individual lab called Quantis Labs actually did a report to see how much carbon, how many pounds of carbon was released into the atmosphere per pound of product produced. And what they found was about 3.5 for Impossible Burger. And when they did the same lab actually looked at White Oak Pastures, which is a regenerative farm in Bluffton, Georgia, they found that 3.5 pounds were actually sequestered. So it could be argued that for every meat alternative burger you had, you'd have to eat one regeneratively raised burger. Second thing I wanted to mention is there was actually a study done where they looked at what would happen if the whole world went vegan in terms of their emissions, and it would be reduced if 300 million Americans went vegan, 2.6% emission reduction, which is not really going to move the needle at all, and there would be widespread nutrient deficiency and doubling of the amount of grains that we're going to consume. And so, yes, I think that regenerative agriculture is the way forward, and it's unfortunately that a lot of people don't understand that. But when they're citing these statistics, they're citing them about confined animal feeding operations, which I am absolutely totally against myself. That's why we're here trying to create a demand for higher quality meat.
Well, and that's what it is too, is that we're promoting the high quality meat products. And I encourage all of you who are listening, don't skimp on this, don't cheat on this. Really make an effort to be 100% grass-finished animal consumers. Vote with your dollars, because the more you support companies like Paleo Valley, the more you support their other company, wildpastures.com, and get the meat delivered, the best meat in the world delivered right to your door. The more we support people like that, then the more businesses and farmers and ranchers will migrate over to that, and that's how we're going to save our health, and that's how we're going to save the planet. So again, please don't eat out at those restaurants that don't do it the right way. You work hard for your money. Don't give them the dollars to the corporations that again aren't doing it right. Autumn, the other thing, we just came back from a road trip, and we went through this natural grocery store in Moab, Utah. And we love their produce, and we love picking up stuff over there, kind of on our trip from Arizona to Colorado that we often take. And would you believe that I saw organic Reese's peanut butter cups and organic Hershey bars?
Wow. Yeah.
So, again, that's not the organic that we're looking for. I assure you, they're cutting corners. They always cut corners. Paleo Valley and the people of Wild Pasture certainly don't.
No, and that's like you said, and it's not even when it's just those really mainstream products. A lot of this consolidation is happening within the market, where these bigger companies know consumers want these smaller mom and pop organizations, and they scoop them up, buy them, and then they change the way that things are being managed, and they're cutting corners and on and on. And so, yeah, we are definitely devoted to never doing that. And so thank you for giving me this opportunity. We couldn't be more passionate about it. For sure.
Well, from that sense, I do hope that Paleo Valley always stays, under family control. So many people sell out for a variety of reasons, and again, I guess the main reason is the dollars. But then they'll say, well, it helps with distribution to get it out to the world. Whenever you do that, the product gets tainted. One of the most famous originators, in this space that I'm not going to name, they sold out early on, and we won't touch their products ever. So
I think I know who you're talking about, and it was really quick. It was like overnight. And then it was like, oops, all of a sudden you didn't really have the pasture raised, and yeah, no.
Yeah, no, you definitely know what I'm talking about. Ellen Pierce is asking on Facebook, do you ship to Australia? Do you know that offhand?
Oh, not yet. Oh, not yet, Australia. We just started shipping to Canada, but not yet, but hopefully very soon.
Yeah, shipping worldwide, food and supplements is very difficult, very problematic and stuff like that. But, Ellen, they got some great free-range grass-fed meat, certainly in New Zealand, so you can check out their lamb products. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
All right, well, listen, head over to Paleo Valley. The code is Wolfson. You get 15% off. If you, again, just support the people that are supporting us, supporting the animals, supporting the environment. And again, Autumn, I appreciate it. Say hello to Chaz, say hello to Maverick. Hopefully our paths cross again very soon.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. We actually got a camper van, so we'll drive down and see you now that you're a Coloradan.
Anytime. Look forward to it. All right, everyone, thank you again for tuning in to the Healthy Heart Show. I'm Dr. Jack Wolfson, cardiologist and natural heart doctor. We will see you next time.